No one knew the truth behind the vacation suitcase because it wasn't packed for a beach. It was packed for goodbye. 70-year-old Henry Caldwell had built a textile and farm empire from nothing. Yet after his wife Evelyn died, his mansion felt like a museum that wouldn't stop echoing her name. His kids, Grant, Miles, and Sophie, visited with worried eyes and busy phone energy, begging him to travel, to breathe, to live. Henry nodded, smiled, and later wrote a trembling farewell letter anyway. At dawn, he drove alone, tracing the map of his memories past the factory, the fields, the old storefronts where he and Evelyn once laughed through leaks in the roof. Finally, he climbed to the abandoned wooden house on the mountain, the place he'd grown up, the place he'd met her. His plan was simple and final. Strike a match, let the smoke do the rest, and turn the past into ashes. But the weeds were cut back. A garden bloomed where nothing should bloom. 3 children stepped out Luke. Noah and little Mia, dirty, thin, and frozen in fear, like he was the monster. They weren't siblings, they said, just orphans who chose each other after fleeing a brutal orphanage. "Please, sir," Luke whispered, shielding Mia. "Don't make us leave." Henry swallowed hard. "I'm not here to throw you out," he said, voice cracking. "I'm here to stay." And when Mia offered him a small wildflower, her most precious thing, something in Henry's chest unlocked. For the first time in months, he didn't want to disappear. He wanted to wake up tomorrow. For them. And somehow for himself. By sundown, Henry Caldwell was sleeping on a dirt floor instead of Egyptian sheets, and for once the weight on his chest wasn't winning. Morning hit hard. Cold earth. A threadbare blanket that smelled like wood smoke. His back ached like a warning. But when he turned his head and saw Luke, Noah, and Mia curled together in the dim light, he felt something he hadn't felt since Evelyn's funeral purpose. Mia blinked awake first, rubbing her eyes with tiny fists. "Grandpa, you're not leaving, right?" Henry's smile finally reached his eyes. "I promised," he said. And a Caldwell doesn't break his word. They ate breakfast the way the kids always did, 1 chunk of stale bread and boiled creek water, yet they insisted Henry take the biggest piece. He didn't argue. He couldn't. On the walk down the mountain, Henry hid his expensive jacket and rolled up his sleeves until he looked like any other worn-out old man trailing behind 3 scrappy kids with flower baskets. In town, reality hit like a slap. People walked past them like they were invisible. Some stared like poverty was contagious. Henry's jaw tightened. Every instinct screamed to pull out a credit card, buy every bouquet, and end their struggle in 10 seconds. But he stayed quiet, watching, learning. They sold only a few bundles. Henry's feet swelled. His neck burned in the sun. Luke nudged him gently. "It's okay, Grandpa. Tomorrow will be better." Noah nodded, eyes bright with impossible hope. "We'll save up. Fix the house. Put glass in the windows. Make it nice for you." Henry laughed, then choked on the sound because it wasn't funny. It was brave. It was pure. And when Mia tucked a tiny flower into his shirt like a medal, Henry realized the truth. These kids didn't just need saving. They had already saved him. The 3rd day was going to be their best until the sound of screeching tires tore the market in half. Henry stood behind the little flower stand, while Luke, Noah, and Mia arranged petals like they were building a future with their bare hands. Rain had left the pavement dark and slick. The crowd was thin, but the kids were smiling anyway. Then a dented gray van slammed to the curb. A thick-shouldered man climbed out, eyes flat and mean. Calvin Red, the orphanage manager. Luke's face drained white. Noah stepped in front of Mia without thinking. Mia didn't run. She just grabbed Henry's sleeve so hard her knuckles went pale. "Well, look what the rats dragged in." Red snarled loud enough for the whole plaza to hear. "You think you can steal my money and hide in the woods?" He lunged and yanked Luke by the collar. Luke choked feet, scraping for traction. Noah swung at him, small fists, big courage, and got knocked down like he was nothing. Let him go. Henry's voice wasn't loud. It was worse than loud. It was final. Red laughed, and what Grandpa Trash? Henry didn't flinch. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small satellite phone, calm, as a judge reading a sentence. He dialed one number. "This is Henry Caldwell," he said, eyes locked on red. "I need state police, my legal team, and the press at the Lower Market Plaza. Now. And call the governor, tell him the next 10 minutes, decide his career." The smile fell off Red's face in real time. Sirens answered before Henry even lowered the phone. And for the first time, the kids realized their grandpa wasn't just protecting them. He had the power to end their nightmare. The sirens faded into a circle of flashing lights, and Calvin Red was on the ground in handcuffs, still shouting, still spitting threats. But Luke, Noah, and Mia weren't cheering. They were shrinking. Henry turned to hug them, ready to say, "It's over," when he felt Mia's little body trembling against his ribs. Luke stared at Henry's phone like it was a weapon that didn't belong in their world. Noah's jaw clenched, eyes glassy with a fear Henry recognized too well. "Grandpa." Luke swallowed. "Now that everyone knows, you're rich. You won't come back to the old house." Noah wiped his face, fast angry at the tears. "You've got real homes, real food, real beds. We were just temporary." Mia didn't speak. She just tightened her grip on Henry's shirt like she could stitch him to her. Henry's throat burned. He opened his mouth, then engines roared again. 3 black SUVs slid to a stop, and out rushed Grant Miles and Sophie Faces, wrecked, eyes red, moving like people who'd been running on panic for days. "Dad." Sophie dropped to her knees, clutching his legs. Grant held a crumpled envelope in shaking hands, Henry's goodbye letter. "How could you leave us like this?" he choked. Henry's shoulders sagged. "I thought I had no purpose," he whispered. "I was wrong?" Then he looked at the 3 kids beside him, silent, bracing for abandonment, and Henry made his choice out loud, where everyone could hear it. "These are my family," he said, pulling them close, "and I'm not losing anyone ever again." Grant's mouth opened like he had 1,000 questions, but none of them mattered as much as the 3 children standing there barefoot and braced for heartbreak. Henry stepped forward and lowered himself until he was eye level with Luke and Noah. His knees creaked. He didn't care. "Listen to me," he said, steady now. "Money didn't make me your grandpa. You did." Sophie wiped her cheeks, looking at Mia, the tiny girl with the wildflower still tucked like a badge in Henry's shirt. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she asked softly. Mia's voice came out as a whisper. "Mia!" Sophie's hand hovered, careful, asking permission without words. Mia hesitated, then leaned in. Just a little, like a door unlocking. Grant exhaled long and shaking. "Daddy said if you mean this, we'll do it the right way." Henry turned toward his lawyer, who stood nearby with a stunned expression and a clipboard already in hand. "I want the adoption process started today," Henry said. "All 3. Luke's tough mask cracked. "For real," he managed. Henry nodded once. "For keeps." Then he pointed back up toward the mountain. "And the old house stays. No demolition. We restore it, new roof-safe walls, a real garden so you never forget where you fought your way out." Miles swallowed hard, and the orphanage. Henry's eyes went cold for a beat. It becomes a place that protects kids, not profits off them. New staff, new oversight, scholarships, counseling, a future. Mia pressed her face into Henry's shoulder, sobbing like her body finally understood it was safe. And as the family closed around them, 6 hearts learning one rhythm, Henry felt it clear as sunrise. He hadn't gone to the mountain to die. He'd gone there to come back to life. Weeks later, the Caldwell mansion didn't feel like a tomb anymore. It sounded like life. Mia's barefoot laughter chased down the hallways like sunlight. Luke and Noah, now in clean shirts but still stubborn as ever, turned the library into their war room. Pencils scattered, textbooks open, arguing over math like it was a sport. And Henry stopped staring at Evelyn's portrait like it was a punishment. He started looking at it like a promise. One afternoon, Sophie found him in the garden, standing still, with a tiny wildflower pinned to his jacket. Mia's first gift, now his daily habit. "You keep wearing that," she said softly. Henry didn't take his eyes off the roses. "It reminds me," he whispered. "I can own 1,000 acres and still be starving. And 3 kids with nothing can feed your soul." Grant and Miles handled the paperwork like a mission. The adoption moved forward fast, but careful. Therapists, doctors, tutors, a real plan, not charity, a future. And the orphanage, Henry didn't just fix it. He rebuilt it from the bones. New leadership, strict oversight, open doors for inspectors and the press. A foundation-funded center where kids were protected, not exploited, where bruises were treated, not ignored, and dreams weren't something you had to earn with pain. The mountain house was restored, 2 fresh, roof-solid floors, safe windows, and a garden that kept blooming like it refused to forget. Then one morning, Henry woke before dawn on purpose. He touched the flower on his chest and smiled like Evelyn could see him, because now he understood something simple. As long as there's someone to love, there's always a reason to wake up. But here's the part nobody warns you about. Even after the headlines fade, healing still shows up in the quiet. On a crisp Saturday morning, Henry Caldwell drove back up the mountain, this time with Grant, Miles, Sophie, and 3 kids packed into the SUV like it was the most normal thing in the world. The restored cabin came into view, fresh wood, shining windows, sealed tight, the wildflower garden stretching out like a soft green blanket. Maya jumped out first. "Grandpa, look, no leaks!" she yelled, pointing at the new roof. Luke ran his palm along the doorway. "This was our place," he said, voice low. Not proud, not sad, just real. Henry nodded. "And it still is," he replied. "Just safer." Inside, Sophie set a framed photo on the mantel. Evelyn's smile caught in sunlight. Henry stared at it for a second too long. Grant noticed. "Dad," Grant asked gently. Henry exhaled, then pinned that tiny wildflower to his jacket, like he always did. "I used to think grief meant the story was over," he said. "Turns out, it was just the next chapter." Miles stepped closer. "And the center," he asked. Henry's eyes sharpened. "Inspections every month. Cameras, counselors, scholarships, no more shadows." He looked down at Noah, who was watching him like a man deciding whether to trust the world again. No more kids paying for adults' cruelty. Then Henry turned almost like he was speaking to someone just beyond the doorway. "And if you're watching this at 65, 70, 80 feeling forgotten, hear me, you're not done, not even close." Grant didn't answer right away. He just stood there in the doorway watching Henry kneel to help Mia tie her shoelace. Slow hands, careful fingers, the kind of patience money can't buy. Noah hovered behind them, still alert, still ready to run if the world flipped again. Luke tried to act cool, but his eyes kept drifting to that framed photo of Evelyn on the mantel, like he was trying to understand how someone can be gone and still be everywhere. Henry looked up at his kids, then at these kids, then back at the cabin that used to be his ending. "I thought purpose was something you retire from," he said quietly. "Like a job, like a title, like a paycheck." He stood chest-rising, voice steadier now. "But purpose is a person. It's someone who looks at you like you matter." Mia reached into her pocket and pulled out 3 tiny wildflowers. She handed one to Sophie, one to Grant, one to Miles, like she was making an oath without knowing the word for it. "So you remember," she said. Luke cleared his throat. "We're not going anywhere," he muttered, half to Henry, half to himself. Henry nodded, eyes glossy but smiling. "Good. Because neither am I. And if you're watching this, maybe you're 65, 75, 85, maybe your house is quiet, and your heart feels even quieter. Let this land, the next chapter, doesn't ask your age. It asks your courage. Before you go, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, What's one thing that still gives you a reason to wake up tomorrow? That night after the cabin lights went out, the mountain got quiet, in a way that can mess with your head. Luke lay awake on the new mattress, staring at the ceiling like it might suddenly disappear. Noah pretended to sleep, but his fingers kept flexing and unclenching, ready to bolt if footsteps came too close. Mia was out cold, her cheek pressed into Henry's old flannel shirt like it was armor. Outside, Henry heard the soft creak of the porch boards. He stepped out and found Luke sitting on the steps, shoulders-tight eyes fixed on the dark trees. "You're thinking too loud," Henry said gently. Luke swallowed. "I heard your son on the phone earlier, talking about lawyers, paperwork. Next steps." He forced a laugh that didn't land. "That's the part where kids like us get transferred." Henry sat beside him, slow and careful, like he didn't want to spook a wild animal. "Luke," he said, "when you saw my phone that day, you thought my money meant you were about to lose me." Luke's jaw twitched. "That's how it works. People with real lives don't keep kids from the street." Noah's voice came from the doorway, small, rough. "We were just a phase." Henry turned to Noah. "Come here," he said, not commanding, inviting. Noah hesitated, then stepped closer, hands shoved deep into his pockets. Henry nodded once, like he was signing something more permanent than a contract. "You didn't save me so I could go back to being empty," he said. "You saved me so I could finally be useful again." Luke's eyes flicked down. "So, we're not going back." Henry looked at the cabin, at the garden, at the 3 sets of footprints that now belonged there. "Nobody is sending you away," he said. "Not tomorrow. Not when it gets complicated. Not when you're angry. Not when you're scared." Noah's shoulders dropped just a fraction. Mia stirred inside and mumbled, "Grandpa." Henry smiled into the dark. "Yeah, baby," he whispered. "I'm still here." By the time they drove back down from the mountain, the world was already trying to label what happened miracle charity stunt PR move. Henry Caldwell didn't care about any of that. What mattered was the sound behind him in the back seat, Mia humming with her forehead against the window, Luke and Noah arguing about who sold more flowers, like kids who finally believed tomorrow was real. The adoption became official the way real promises do, quietly, legally, permanently. Court papers, new last names, new birth certificates. But Henry made one thing clear to every lawyer in the room. This isn't a rescue, this is family. The Caldwell mansion changed fast after that. Not with marble, with noise, with backpacks by the stairs, with cereal spilled on the counter, with laughter echoing through halls that used to swallow grief. And Henry changed too. He stopped sleeping through daylight. He started waking up early on purpose, pinning that tiny wildflower to his jacket like a daily reminder that love can grow in the hardest dirt. He visited the rebuilt children's center himself, unannounced, walking the halls like a guardian, not a donor. He shook hands with counselors. He listened to kids who used to be afraid to speak. He made sure the doors stayed open and the shadows stayed out. One evening, Sophie found him sitting beneath Evelyn's portrait, not crying, smiling. "You okay, Dad?" she asked. Henry nodded, eyes shining. "I used to think losing her was the end," he said, "but she loved me too much to let me quit." From the hallway, Mia called Grandpa. "Come see my drawing." Henry stood, straightened his jacket, and touched the flower at his chest. "Coming, sweetheart," he said. Because the truth is simple. Whether you're 25 or 85, real wealth isn't what you keep. It's who you don't let go. The next morning, the mansion woke up before the sun because Henry Caldwell did. He moved through the kitchen in his slippers, quiet, as a man who used to live inside grief. The coffee smelled stronger now. The air felt lighter. On the table sat Mia's drawing from last night, a stick figure grandpa. 3 kids holding hands, and one woman in the sky with a gentle smile. Evelyn. Watching. Blessing. Not as a ghost, but as a reminder that love doesn't vanish. It transforms. Henry pinned the same tiny wildflower to his jacket and walked into the hallway, just as Luke and Noah thundered down the stairs, backpacks bouncing, arguing like brothers who'd forgotten how to be scared. Mia followed, hair messy, eyes bright. She ran into Henry's legs like it was the safest place on earth. "Grandpa, you promised pancakes," she said, looking up like the world still kept promises. Henry bent down, kissed her forehead, and nodded. "I did. And I will." Grant paused in the doorway, watching his father flip pancakes like a man auditioning for a life he didn't believe he deserved a month ago. Sophie caught Henry's eye and smiled, small, grateful reel. And in that ordinary messy morning syrup on the counter, laughter in the hall, Henry understood the final truth of his comeback. He didn't survive to protect an empire. He survived to protect a heartbeat. Sometimes the thing that saves you won't look like success. It'll look like a small hand reaching for yours. If you're older and feeling done, remember this: your story isn't measured by what you built. It's measured by who you choose to love next. If this touched something in you, drop a comment. What's one reason you still want to wake up tomorrow? And if you want more stories like this, subscribe, hit the like button, and stay with us, because the next chapter might be the one that changes everything.